Welcome, everybody. We're going to be working on our Chapter 1 programming exercises tonight. The exercises themselves, for the most part, are pretty simplistic. We're focusing around the print command, but in the process of learning how to use that command, we're also going to learn a lot about the tools we're using, which will be the Spyder IDE. We will also learn how to submit homework correctly, what I'm expecting when you're doing homework, and I'm going to toss in a bunch of lecture topics as we go. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Now, we did make the assumption that, before you're starting here doing any of this coding, that you already have a coding environment installed. Now, we have a recommended distribution of Python that we suggest to our students, and that's what we call the Anaconda distribution, which you can find here. And we already went through this process, so I'm not demonstrating the install here, but I'm just showing people that are maybe watching the video in the aftermath or aren't in class tonight. This is where you go to get it, so you can see the address up in the URL. But if you just search Anaconda in Python, you will find this pretty quickly. It is available for all platforms. And then once you have it installed, Anaconda really installs a whole suite of products on your system. So right now I'm launching, that I did that way too fast, right, Matthew? Right? You go to your start menu after it's installed, and you're looking basically for the Anaconda Navigator, which when it launches, and it's still kind of in the process of doing it, and it's finally kind of doing it. All right, and here it is. It launches this browser interface, if I can just locate it amongst my 50 million windows. There it is. And it is, okay, so it's giving me a little nag screen. It says, well, it wants me to update. You might get that right after you install it, by the way. Don't worry about doing it now. You can do that later. So I'm going to say no, remind me later. You can tell that in the background, it's launching a bunch of little tools and windows and stuff. Here in the interface, you can do a number of different things. The first thing is whatever Python related software you have in place, you can launch it from here. So it is a launch point. Real practically though, I'm going to let you guys know I never use it to launch Spyder, which is our primary IDE. And I rarely use it to launch the Jupyter Notebook, which is our other secondary IDE. You will notice there's a bunch of other tools. Some of them will say launch, some might say install. So if you were like curious about trying PyCharm, for example, or if you guys are in the data program or AI data analytics, RStudio is a thing that you'll be using later on in your program, by the way. The other reason this tool is helpful is it also helps you configure your Python programming environment. It shows you which libraries are installed, right? And there's a whole bunch of them, right, that come with. Anaconda, by the way, is built predominantly for doing data science and artificial intelligence work, right? That's what it's built for, like out of the box. If you're into doing stuff, for example, like graphics, the book pushes you to do, I think it's Easy Graphics. You can see I have it installed. I just went to the search bar here and found it, but it's not installed by default. So if you start getting to some of those extra credit assignments where I offer try the Easy Graphics exercise, right? You'll have to install this library first. You can do it through this interface. It's the easiest way to add it. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate that in class right now, but if you are in that scenario and you're trying to earn the extra credit and you want to try the graphics, I'll help you out, right? But here's what I'm going to tell you guys right off the bat is there's content in the book that I think right from chapter 2 or 3, where they start teaching you how to create GUI programs right off the bat. That's not what I'm teaching here. I am teaching console programming in this class because we got to get the basic concepts first before we throw in the GUI stuff. And that's not unusual. It's not that you can't do GUI programming. So if you want, you can add that. There's more than one way to do GUI with Python though, right? And that is like a whole separate discussion and thing. So if you want, you can come in here, use this interface if it works for you. I'm not a fan, so I'm going to close it. Right, so that's kind of like disturbing to you guys who just installed it. You're like, I installed this and you're closing it, you're not even using it. Well, all the tools that install I will use. I just don't like to launch my tools that way. What I do is I just go down here to the start menu and I want to use Spider, so I just type SPY. That's enough, and it comes up on my start menu. If you're on a Mac, you do the spotlight search, you do Command Space, right? And just start typing Spider. It should pop up, and then you go ahead and launch it. Now, it's a very good chance, and I'm just putting it out there, you guys might have a more updated version of Python and a more modern version of Spider than I do. And I'm going to dismiss this. And I'm noticing that my window is really messed up. I don't know how it got like that, but something happened there. Probably a Python upgrade. All right. Now, Python, or excuse me, Spider is up and running now. We have it on our screen. And I gave you a super quick tour last time, but I'm going to kind of repeat it, right, for people that are coming into this cold. Basically, Spider lays out in 3 panels on the screen. The big panel on the left is where we type our code. The small panel on the right, this is our console. This is where we will see our output. Then you have this utility panel up here that, real frankly, most of the time I don't use a lot. And what I tend to do during class is I just go like that. And then when I need it, I'll pull it down and look. But if you're curious what goes up there, you can look at what's in your variables here. You can look at your plots once you figure out what those are. And then you can also look at your file structure so you can interact with where your stuff is stored. Not a fan of managing my files that way, but I'm pointing it out because some people will like it. Okay. The other thing that's here that's helpful is the help window, right? So you can actually look up how to use the product in little tutorials and stuff. But you're in class and I'm going to show you stuff, so that's kind of a tutorial also. Other helpful tips. As you guys are looking at my screen, this is coming up at the default font size for the program. And I have it's not super high res, it's not like a 4K screen. I think it's just 1080p. But the stuff is pretty small and hard to read. You can click into the panels and you can do Control key press down and the plus sign, the one on the number bar at the top, not the one on the keypad. And if you press plus, stuff gets smaller. If you press minus, it gets smaller. You can also, at least in the coding window, hold down the Control key and scroll forward and backward on your mouse, and it'll do the same thing. Now, if you're seeing it just fine, you don't have to make it bigger. I'm coding and I'm screen recording, so I make it bigger because otherwise people can't see it, right? So this is a lot easier for you guys to see than what I had before, correct? Yes. Right. And so I will dynamically scale that as we go. In the console window here, you can do the same thing. And I don't know if you guys are catching this. When I move over here, the blue highlight pops up. And when I click in, the highlight stays, meaning this is the active window. If I click into the console, same thing, blue highlight. And I can also make the console output bigger. So I can go Control plus over here as well. And that gets bigger. Once again, make it bigger to make it easier for everybody to see. Now, why do we call this an IDE, an integrated development environment? Because what we get is the ability to write the code, have a debugger that does error checking on the fly. We also have some IntelliSense tools, which both gives us an on-the-fly reference to our code, and, by the way, helps us complete the statements we're typing automatically, right? And we have a window where we can output it and not have to leave the product. It's all integrated into one environment, so we can code, see the result, troubleshoot all in one space, right? So that's why they call it an IDE, integrated development environment. Hint, hint, question on the midterm, by the way, for sure. It's a given. You need to know that term. So there's gave you a couple answers for the midterm already. All right. So last week when we fired up the product, we did the simple print command just to make sure that Spider is working correctly. If it's still in the window, great, right? There it is. You can hit that play button and make it show. Notice what happens when I hit the play button. First of all, I'm going to hover over that button for just a moment. You'll notice that it says run file, but if you look really close, and I can't zoom in on that, there's also in parentheses, it says F5. So if your function keys aren't flipped like a lot of ours are to control hardware, F5 also will execute a program. On my keyboard, I think F5. I'm not sure what that does. I can't read it. I think it's like a screen selector button or something. Like I don't know if your keyboards are the same, and especially like on my little MacBook, the function keys are all like volume, brightness, etc. And I have to hit a function key to hit the F5. My favorite way is I just click the green play button, but that runs the code. It takes whatever's in the code window and runs it in the console. Notice what the console does too. When I run it, it tells you what it's running. What file, where that file is located, right? Also, the working directory for Python and Spider, in other words, where the settings for the program are actually stored are in this directory. This happens every time you hit run, and then after that line, you see the output, and then you get a fresh instance ready to run the next program. What's really interesting about the console for Python is I can actually run code directly in the console, like I could on a server, like Guido was doing when he was automating his tasks. So for example, this is really weird, but I can be here in the console and I can go 2 + 2, press enter, and there you go. I have my output. Now, granted, that's not really Python code, but it shows that Python's listening and doing what I'm asking. Also, like the print command I have over there, I could type it here at the prompt and say print hello Milwaukee, because that's where I'm sitting today, right? And press enter, and there it does. It does the command. So this is kind of interesting. So the other thing this tells you about Python is because it's an interpreted language, I can on the fly send in a command and make it run. One of the only other major languages, as I mentioned before, that does this is JavaScript, except JavaScript does it in the browser. Web developers, you'll get a healthy dose of that. Just wait. it comes in a little while, right? And that's okay. And it works a lot the same way, except you have to use JavaScript syntax when you do the console in your web browser. This one is built to do Python, so it reacts to Python commands. Okay. So we have an interactive console and we have our coding window. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to close the Python file that I have, and I'm doing it on purpose to show you what happens when I launch a new file. So when you launch a new file and basically have no tabs, it automatically creates one for you. Notice though that it's called untitled, right? It hasn't been titled yet. And way up here, right at the tip of my mouse, right, and I'm moving my mouse so you can see it, there's this little, dot or asterisk that indicates this file is not yet saved. All right, so let's talk about that as a process. And this is one that I learned super early on, never forgot it, and it saved my butt many, many times working in IT. Whenever you're in a program, I don't care if it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, whatever, a coding tool, when you create a new file, the first thing you should do is save the file before you even type any code. Save it, right? So I'm going to go to the file menu and I'm going to do a save as. And then comes the conversation of where do I put my work, right? So now we go to file management, and this is another really important piece. Web developers, if you're in the web programming class, you know, I have an assignment on this, right? Like manage your files. In this Python class, I just kind of recommend that you have a good file structure. But what makes a lot of sense for most of us, right? Especially if you're working on your local hard drive, is that maybe you create a gateway folder, then create a Python folder, and then start creating folders for each unit, right? And then you know where to find your work. Most of the programs that we will create, right? I'm going to have you save them as individual files. I do get a lot of people that maybe are new to this, and I might have already that have submitted that will say, oh, this is really easy. Can't I just put it all in one file? I'm going to say only okay to that, by the way, for the first chapter. After that, I really do want you to turn in separate files for every program, even if they're really short. Right? I just think it's easier file management. I'll show you that later, but I'm just kind of giving you the lay of the land. This is not where I save my stuff. I put my stuff on my Google Drive, which is linked up to my OS here. And then I have my Python folder, and I don't have a 2024 fall yet. No, yes, I do. There's my unit X. We're doing unit 1. So I'm labeling it unit 1. My standard approach, at least for Python, is all lowercase. It's just my standard convention. You can name it whatever you want, but name it something meaningful so you know where to find stuff. Now I'm going to go into that folder, and then the first exercise that we're working on, I don't even remember what the number was on it, but the first exercise is 1.1. Okay, so I'm going to name it. So this is how I name mine, right? I'm just going to name it exercise EX 1 underscore 1 Y underscore, because if I put a dot in there, then it thinks a file extension is coming, which doesn't work. So I just say exercise 1 underscore 1. That works for me. You can name it whatever you want. All right. And then if you want, you can add .py, but if you don't, it will automatically add it for you. Right. And I'm saving it. And now you can see the file name appears up here. If I make any changes inside the file, notice that the asterisk comes back, meaning it's not saved. And I have this tendency when I'm recording stuff like this, or when I'm doing demos in class, I'll just call it out and I'll say Control S to save, right? So I'm holding down the Control key and pressing the S key. If I have a bunch of files open, the command in here is, there is a save all, it's Control Alt S, right? Usually I go to the menu for that one because I never remember the keystroke, but I often say that, or I'm hitting the little save icon up here and there's a save all right next to it. But I do that because folks, if you forget to save stuff, you can lose it, right? Okay, so let me not freak you out too much. Spyder and a lot of IDEs these days, if you forget to save your work, when you close it, it'll often come back in the unsaved state. So I'm going to demonstrate that, and I'm going to say no, and let's see if that actually is true with Spyder. Anybody that uses Visual Studio Code, by the way, knows, or Notepad++, for example, knows that when you close your product without saving something, it just brings it back in the unsaved state. You notice what happened to me? I lost my work in Spyder. So that message that said, do you want to save your work? I should have listened. Good thing I wasn't typing up my final project or something.
So,
And there is no final
Ty,
project.
quick question.
Yes.
This being it's a pretty powerful tool, why wouldn't it have an autosave?
It's not that okay, so let's talk about that. That's just a design feature. It is a rare few products that automatically save the code. Like the one, like for example, like one product that does that, right, is Notepad++. Like if I change my file here, it goes red. And if I turn it off and then turn it back on, it just comes back in the unsaved state. That's just how it does it. Visual Studio Code does the same thing. It's not a design feature of Spyder, but Spyder did warn us. It did say, do you want to save your work? I decided not to choose that. Wrong answer, by the way. So if it's telling you to save it, you should. Visual Studio Code and Notepad++ are two examples of ones that don't require that. All right. I'm going to go back here. So yeah, this is the other little thing, right? So I usually, when I'm coding through exercises, especially when they're more complicated, I have cheat sheets. I have it all done already, and I follow my cheat sheets as a guide for what I'm teaching you guys. And that's not something I'm trying to hide, but that's, just to make sure I cover all the things I want to cover and do it in a way that makes sense and is, informative. All right. So before we go even any further here, I also want to point out on the screen here, right? So we created this new program. I didn't type in the stuff at the top of the document. So what you're seeing here is two formats for comments. So the first one, we learned this earlier in our lecture stuff, right? If you start a line with a hash mark or a pound sign, if you call it that, the shift of the number 3 key, any of the code that follows is non-executing. Now, this is telling us very explicitly that we are using a UTF-8 character set. It's kind of like the Universal Computer Character Set that holds a majority of the world's language characters within it. Really, it's superfluous. It doesn't need to be there. It does no harm being there. It's just information. In some environments, it's useful. Typically, it's when we're working in other languages, right? Not really a concern for us here today, but I'm just kind of putting it out there. The other section here, it did this automatically as well. It picked up on my user account inside of Windows, which for me is just my initials, TK, and it adds me in as the author. It also tells me when I created it. You can leave that in there. But notice these are also non-executing commands. And notice the format here. It's triple, double quotes, and then you can put stuff in between. There is another format, and we're not super worried about it. Alex?
Just as a quick little tidbit, if anyone wants to know how to change the author name, I actually figured out how to change the default.
Okay. And you do that through the options, right?
Through tools.
Yeah.
It's actually really quick and easy. It's tools, preference, edit. You don't have it. Then, advance. And then you click edit template at the top. Yep. And then you just replace what you want to change out.
Yeah. And you know what? And it's in code speak. I'm going to say generally you want to cancel that, by the way, right? I'm not a huge user of this space. Okay, and the other thing that I'm not going to do to you guys, so if any of you have ever taken a coding class before, sometimes your instructors will say, put the name of the assignment in here, put your name in here, put the date in here, yada, yada, yada. I don't care, real frankly, right? Because Brightspace tracks it all for me. What I do use this space for, though, is when I'm working off of the book, and I will be working off of the book here, and I look at the first exercise, sometimes I come in here and I grab the instruction for the assignment, and then I come back to the IDE and I'll just paste it in up here so I know what to do. That's one of the ways I use it. Sometimes I just blow it all away. How you use that stuff is really up to you. All right, this is just informational stuff. For right now, I'm going to leave it there. All right, so let's get in and start actually writing some code. So I'm dropping below where those comments are, and I have a blank line here. And you'll notice that every time I add a line, the line numbers increase, right? And those line numbers are important in coding because when you get error messages, it often points to which line the error is on. The first thing says, write a program that prints a greeting of your choice, perhaps in a language other than English. So if you guys are speaking another language, go for it. I'm going to say print. I'm going to put in a set of double quotes. Did you notice what just happened? And I'm just going to repeat this. I started typing print. I didn't finish, by the way. The IntelliSense tool is picking up on the fact that I'm typing this command in. It's got one highlighted, and without typing the final letter, if I press enter, it'll throw it in. Then it also gives me a complete breakdown of how to use the tool if I care to read it. Sometimes I find this a little obtrusive, but it gives you the complete usage almost like overly verbose, right? But now that I'm inside the parentheses, if I want to put text on the screen, I add double quotes. I only typed one, but it put in two. That's autocomplete, by the way, or IntelliSense, some people will call it. Then you can put in your message and you can make it whatever you want. Mine's going to be like, hey, whatever, hi there, dot, dot, dot. That's my message. You can put in whatever you want. The traditional thing, like if you've never coded before, you're supposed to say, hello world. Why? Because somebody did it in the past and we're all supposed to do it in the future. There you are. Now, when I'm done with the statement being printed in there, I am going to hit the run button and display it. Okay, so it worked. Yay. And there was a whole lot of rejoicing. So now let me show you how to take this exercise and part of the process of submitting it, you will notice, and I want you to like always make sure you read the instructions for assignments, right? So let's read through this really quick so just so you guys have a lay of the land. So make sure to complete these tasks. Create a folder for the chapter 1 exercises. You call it whatever you want. Save each program as a separate file using a meaningful file name for easy identification. Your call, right? I prefer it's not Untitled 1, Untitled 2, but if that's what you choose, that's on you, right? Don't come crying later when you can't find it, right? Follow the directions for each exercise carefully and create each program as described. Test the program to make sure it works as intended. Correct any errors. Hopefully there's none, right? As you complete each program, use the snipping tool in Windows or the screenshot tool or the grab tool on Mac, depending on which OS you're running, and take a screenshot of the code you created and the program running in the console window. And I would prefer those as separate screenshots, by the way. I don't want like print screen on a 4K display and then dropping it into a Word document. Some people do that. I'll show you how in just a second. Take those screenshots, put them into a Word document along with some narrative. In other words, tell me what I'm looking at. Don't leave me guessing. If it's exercise 1, label it exercise 1. Add comments about your successes and challenges. And so if it worked, you can say it worked, no problems, Or if it was a horrible nightmare to get it to work, tell me about it. Or even further, if you didn't get it to work, show me what you did and just say, I can't figure it out. Maybe highlight it in red or something. And then when I'm grading it, I can look at it. Often, if you do that, I will give you a chance to fix it, by the way, if you're fessing up that it's not correct. If you don't, then I'm just going to ding the points and whatever. When you're all done, you're going to upload that document to Brightspace. Then you're going to take the folder where all your code is, zip it, and upload the zip file as well. So it's kind of like two things will be submitted: a zip of all the code and a document showing me what all those code files are and the success. So, and just like full disclosure here, when I'm grading this stuff, by the way, I'm predominantly looking at the screenshots. The only reason I open up the code is if I see this doesn't look right or it's not working. Let's see what's wrong with it, right? So that's kind of the general lay of the land. Also notice, please do not zip the screenshot document. Just zip the code, right? I don't want to have to unzip a file to find your screenshots. Submit the document separately and the zip file separately, right? And some of you will still do that, but I will fix that. And I notice I still have a Blackboard reference here. And thanks to the marvels of the web, I can actually change that to say Brightspace. All right. So every exercise that you complete here is worth a half point. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, meaning 4 points total for this assignment. Phil, question?
I was just wondering how big are those files? Do you expect them to be that you have to zip them?
It's not about size.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. It's not like I'm trying to take like a movie file and zip it to make it easier to transport. It's more about if you have 10 programs that you're writing, I don't want you attaching 10 separate files. I just want you to zip them together, and then that serves as a backup for you as well. So this is the other strategy.
Gotcha.
When you submit it to Brightspace, let's say somebody steals your laptop, I have it in Brightspace. You're not losing your stuff.
Okay.
You know, so that's kind of the strategy. It's just an easier transport mechanism. Has nothing to do with space efficiency. Martin?
So the zip file is only meant to be created for the individual PY files that have the code. Is that correct?
Well, I'm gonna correct one thing you're saying, not the individual ones, but all. So for example, when I finish coding all these exercises, I'll have 8 exercises in a folder. I will zip all of them together.
The entire folder, the folder
Yes.
recursively. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, precisely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, folks, let's dig back in here and let's get that stuff into a Word document. So you can see I was doing the same thing with my database people earlier. Sorry, database people, you get like a double dose of it. But good idea if you're creating a new document, you can use any document editor you want. So you can use Word, you can use Pages on a Mac, if you got LibreOffice or Google Docs or whatever. I don't care which word processor you use, but when you're done, I want that file saved in either a doc format, like a Word format, or a PDF. If you turn in a Pages file, I can't read it. If you put it on Google Drive, it's a pain, right? If you're giving me a link, just if you're in Google Drive, you can go to the File menu, choose Download as Word. If you're in Pages, you can do Save as Word or Save as PDF, right? Word, of course, saves as Word, so not a problem. It's a good idea to maybe label your work. Something like that. You want to put your name on it. Name. Some people put my name on it. I really don't care. Some people put the date on it. I really don't care. To be real frank, the labeling is more for your sake. I think a title for which exercises they are is helpful, but the first exercise is exercise 1.1. Oh, the other thing I showed my database people is like, oh, hey, this is a title, so make it a heading. Here's your name. You can make that, I don't know, heading 2. And then here's a regular exercise. Now I'm just making a space for it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to Spyder. And now I'm going to use my snipping tool to capture a screenshot. So in Windows, I go to the Start menu, and then I just start typing SNIPP snipping. If you're on a Mac, there's the modern Macs are using their screenshot tools called Screenshot, right? So just do Command space to bring up the Spotlight search, start typing screenshot, the interface will come up. The process is fairly similar. If you're on an older Mac, they have the grab tool, and I would anticipate most of you probably aren't using that. So, all right. So when you get the snipping tool up on screen, I'm just going to click New. The screen kind of grays out. Cursor turns into a crosshair, and then I'm going to highlight the code. There's not a lot here, right? And if you have a lot of code and it goes off the bottom of the screen, you probably have to do multiple screenshots. All right, so I do want the code screenshot separate from the output screenshot. And I'll show you why. So first, let's do this process here. Once it lands inside here, you can hit the copy button or Control C, go back to Word and paste it in. Right, there it is. Huge. All right, that's very easy to read. I'm going to press enter and move down a line. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to capture the console. So I'm going to do new. Oops, except you have to be set up to capture it. So let's go back again. Let's try that again. New. And now I'm going to capture the output. That's actually adequate right there. Once again, copy, back over to Microsoft Word and paste. And then you might say something like, yay, it worked. ... or horrible disaster or whatever. And then you move on and put in the next exercise and keep going. Right. So this is what I use predominantly for grading. Now, some of you, when you do screenshots, it's not like something maybe you do all the time, but some of you know that if you do like print screen, and I'm not even sure where mine is anymore. Like, I think that's capturing it. Okay, well, that just brings up, okay, Windows 11 just brings you to the snipping tool. That's kind of interesting. But the same thing happens there. You can selective, but if you get the whole screen, and I don't know if you guys just picked up on what I did there, maybe not, because it probably grayed out. Are you guys still there? Yeah, you guys are still there. Okay.
Yeah.
But like if you're grabbing a screenshot and you're grabbing the whole IDE, and I just want to show you how this works. Even though I'm zoomed in and I copy this and then I put it in that Word document, here's what happens on my end is I end up seeing stuff that gets, this is not a great example because I was way zoomed in here, but I end up getting stuff where the letters are so small I just cannot read them. And then when I try to zoom in, I cannot make it clear enough to read. The general rule of thumb is that the fonts inside the screenshots should be about the size of the fonts in the document, and then we're okay. But if you do them separately, it's never a problem. Juan, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, how did you run the file in Spider? Or in
How did I run the file in Spider, like to make
Yeah.
it go?
Yeah, just hit the
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, you just hit the green play button.
Oh, all right, perfect. Cool.
Yeah, it's almost too easy, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you run it? Hit play.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey,
You're
Kai,
welcome. Yes.
going back to adding the second phrase. So you went to new, so you can actually copy another session.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Once you're in the snipping tool,
Right.
yeah, you make sure that what you want to capture is on the screen, and then you hit new, and then you can highlight whatever you want.
Okay.
And you know what? The snipping tool in Windows has gotten a lot better. You can even record like little video snippets and stuff now, and you don't doesn't have to be square and all kinds of goofy stuff. I just stick with the basics. I just go with the default mode, click new, drag around what I want, and I'm done. It's not a big deal. All right, let's keep coding here because now we are starting to kind of run tight on time, and you guys are putting me in like hurry up offense here, which is fine, by the way. I can swing with that. So that was our first exercise. Now let's go on to the next one. The next exercise we have on deck is exercise 2. So exercise 2 says, write a program that prints the sum of the first 10 positive integers. So we do want it to do the math. We learned this in the Kahoot, right? If you put quotes around it, it won't print. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do this once again. I'm going to call it like hurry up offense here. Like it's the fourth quarter and I got like 3 minutes left and I want to score, right? So that's kind of my mindset. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the incorrect way to do it. And by virtue of the fact that I've already got this coded, I'm going to do a little copy pasting to speed things up, but I do have to create a new file. So I'm going to hit the new button so I can go to the new icon here, or I can go to file, new file. Either one is fine. First thing you do, save as, right? New file, save as immediately, right? I'm just trying to get that habit going. So I'm going to go to save as. It's going to go in the same folder. I'm going to call it exercise 1_2. If you want, you can add .py. Otherwise, it's automatic. Zooming in. And here's the way you should not do it. So I'm just pasting it to show you. But in this approach, it won't do the math because I have double quotes in there. It's going to take what's in between those double quotes and verbatim put it on the screen. So watch what happens when I run it. It's not telling me what the answer is. I know what the answer to that equation is. Here's the other grand tip of programming. Whenever you're running math in a program, you need to be able to figure out what the answer is somehow. You can use a calculator, you can use a spreadsheet, you can use pencil and paper, but I know the answer of adding the first 10 digits excluding 0 is 55. And for whatever reason, right? Math geek. Right? That happens. So I know what the answer is. So if I go in here, right, and this is actually wrong, right? I'm gonna comment that out. But now I'm gonna paste it back in, and I'm gonna remove those double quotes. And now I'm gonna run it. But you notice what was happening there? Here I got like, okay, one singular double quote in there, and it's not correct syntax. Do you notice the little red highlight here? This is the on the fly debugger. It knows my code's broken. It's showing me which line it's on. And then this is like that error message we were seeing in the book, right? End of line while scanning string literal. And you know what? If I go to run it, it's just going to give me the same error message over here. It knows it's going to go wrong, so it's telling you before you even run it. So you fix those errors, so the highlights go away. Now if I run it, look at the correct answer, right? Just what I put into the calculator. And I don't know if you guys like watch me like type in the formula like really fast, like 1 + 2 + 3, you know, like super fast on that too. But there's exercise 2, folks. Right. One thing that you can do when we're coding in class, you can always wait to do your screenshots later, because here's what happens. The console will retain all of your output as we go. It'll keep scrolling. Right. So let's keep coding. I'm going to move on to the next one. Next exercise is exercise, I think it's 1-6, and I better double check that. Pretty sad that I don't have it memorized, but it's true. So we're doing 6, 9, 11, 12, 14, and 15. So here comes exercise 6, which says, hey, well, this one's more fun. This one you might want to save for later if you're trying to code along, especially if your name has, like Elizabeth, yours will probably take a while. I'm trying to look at people with short names. Now, I have a little hack for this one, right? Because most people here at Gateway call me Ty, right? So that's just 2 letters. So we're going to do basically what we call ASCII art. But here's kind of an interesting thing. For every line, we're going to have to output an asterisk, if that's the character you want to use, a space, a space, a space, asterisk, space, 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 asterisk, asterisk, yada, yada, yada. And it might take a little bit of playing with it until you figure out how you can actually do your name. So you might kind of build it and then come back to it and tweak it a little bit, make it look better. And then I get the people who are way overachievers and make it look super fancy. That's fine if you want to do that. But I'm just looking to see if you can get your name up on the screen. So back over to Spider. New file. What do I do first? Save as. Right? This will be like a repetition. And then your challenge will be, when I forget to do a save as right away, catch me on it. Call me up. Right? You guys promise? Because sometimes I forget. Not that it's the end of the world. But here's, okay, actually, let's do something kind of weird. If I go to run this, this still stays unsaved. Here's kind of an interesting thing. When you actually have it saved, though, and I'm going to demonstrate. Okay, so this is exercise 1_6. Notice .py is automatic. Then I type in some stuff. And actually, I got to type in some stuff that we know works. So let's just type in that. Right now, it's unsaved. The moment I run it, it saves. So you don't have to save before you run. The process of running saves it. That's a pretty standard feature in an IDE. This is not the answer for this equation. The one thing that you might want to start doing, though, is start thinking about how this stuff looks when it hits the screen. And one thing I don't like, and this is just a personal flaw of mine, is when I look at this stuff is like really busy and I don't want to look at it. I just want to look at the stuff below. But it's harder to look at if there's not a blank line. So sometimes when I do print output, I just do a blank print command. And then I start doing my stuff. Now, folks, I have mine all already figured out, as you can guess. So I'm just copy pasting it. But I want you to understand that the layout of this needs to be consistent in order for it to translate over to the console correctly so it's readable. If this is really kind of a lesson in like lining things up and counting, basically. Right. So you guys will figure out how to write your name in an efficient manner, right? How tall you make it. You know, my model really was, I was looking at the book. I was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 asterisks tall. So it's 5 print statements with double quotes. And then I just start trying to build my name with it.
We do our initials.
No, that's my nickname. One of my nicknames.
Okay. But I'm saying, so no, we got to actually write out our full name.
Well, at least your first name one.
Okay.
You don't have it so bad.
Yeah,
right?
no.
It's not that long.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Phil probably has it next easiest.
Quick
Right.
question on that, Ty. So
Yeah.
you're saying you can do a vertical syntax?
What I'm saying is that what you're noticing here is to get this on the screen like this,
Mm-hmm.
there's a direct correlation with how it lays out here in the print statements
Right.
to how it outputs to the screen.
Hmm.
Web people, by the way, here's a marked difference between HTML and Python. In a Python print statement, all the spaces count. Think about like the HTML you're learning, where you put in extra spaces and none of it shows up on the page. Right? And my HTML people know what I'm talking about. Right. So this is a practice basically in that anything you're putting in a print statement, including spaces, register on the screen.
So
And
what
there
I was
are
saying,
people- okay.
the middle line on the letter Ty. So you can do just one line to cover all those dots or asterisks. Is that possible?
I see. No, Phil, I know where you're going with this, right? Yeah, there are ways. Okay, so there's ways where I can put in Uline characters and get all the asterisks typed in on one line. I don't recommend that because it gets a little bit confusing. This
Mhm.
approach would just do basic print statements on each line
Okay.
and just throw in the spaces is to give you that direct correlation between what you're seeing in the print statement goes directly to the console in the same fashion. The new line character, which is down the road for us, is, I'm going to say, fairly irrelevant at this point because that's not really kind of the lesson here. Now, really what we are creating, folks, is what we call ASCII art, right? And I don't mean to say that. I just need to do here a Control S. All right, I'm going to move on to the next exercise in the interest of time because we are rapidly running out if you guys aren't noticing. So the next exercise is exercise 9. And exercise 9 is where we build this little house. Now this one's kind of interesting because here, when you're doing this, I mean, you can come in here and try to count the spaces. And I don't know if you guys are picking up on the fact that I'm counting 3. So the first print statement would have 3 spaces and a plus. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of do the solution for you like super rapid.
Copy paste.
I am going to copy paste it because of the interest of time here. But let's follow the whole process. Save as. Exercise 1_9. Right. I'll do one blank print command. I just like to do that. You don't have to. And then here's my solution. Now, the house is kind of an interesting one because here's what happens. I'm going to show you my solution here in Notepad++, because Notepad++, when it puts this stuff on the screen, you notice like this character here is the character that sits right above your enter key as a shift. It's the shift of the backslash key. And that character is called a pipe, by the way. It's a straight up and down line. It's not the letter L. It's not the number 1. And you notice how in the IDE and Spider, it's a little like italicized. Do you guys catch that? Right. And I have people that it drives them crazy, by the way, to try to figure out which coding font they can switch to make it look like this. But what I will assure you is when you actually run it, it does come out straight in the console. So don't let that throw you. The fun part of this exercise is it's a troubleshooting thing, because really I don't need to code the spaces that follow the plus sign, because that's the only character, right? I got to get the ones before. And so it's really kind of a matter of counting, seeing the pattern, seeing which characters need to be used. And folks, I don't know if you've ever done a search like on people doing ASCII art, but before there were like GUI operating systems, people made an art of this thing, and people still do it, right? They like take regular characters from the keyboard and turn it into art forms. And if you're not believing, do a search. Here, I'll tell you what, I'll just do it really quick. Just do a search for ASCII art, and I'll just click on images here, right? And you can see the kind of stuff that people create with it. It's kind of weird like that. People would just take keyboard characters and build artwork, but they do. I'm not saying you need to do that. Yes, Matthew?
When you say ASCII art, I think of a kind of an older video game. It's called Adam. It's a roguelike. But the original game was drawn in ASCII art.
Yeah, you got to think like back in the old days before we had graphics, they try to be creative, and it's not like I want you to be ASCII artists necessarily, but it's kind of a thing. This is more about getting output to the console correctly, right? This is exercise 1-9. I'm moving on. We got 8 minutes left. 2 minutes on the clock. I'm kidding. Right, so I'm like using like bad football analogies here. Next exercise is exercise 1-11. All right. So write a program that prints 3 items, such as the name of your 3 best friends or favorite movies, on 3 separate lines. Piece of cake, right? So once again, it's just practice on creating output. So once you've honestly done this a few times, it really becomes very pedestrian, I think. Oh, and you know what? I just overwrote my files. I'm sorry. Well, I'm going to just start fresh here. No worries. I already have this done. I want to demonstrate for you guys. So this is what I did last time, and I'll show you kind of my output. So this is what I put together. And notice I got a little fancy with it. I put dotted lines in there, and I'm not sure that this is the correct list, but it's close. Probably, 3 movies I've probably seen way too many times. With Die Hard being the best Christmas movie ever, right? Just kidding. Not really. Okay.
Hey, it is a Christmas movie.
It totally is. And you see how it outputs. Right. All right. Next one is, all right. So this one's kind of a fun one. This is basically exercise 1-12, which says, write a program that prints a poem of your choice. If you don't have a favorite poem, search the internet for Emily Dickinson or E.E. Cummings, but here's my unofficial thing. If you think about it, songs or music is basically poetry also. So I usually just do songs. What I did last time, I'm just going to put it on screen and show you. And I'm not going to actually code through, but this is what I did. All right. So I just did a Beatles song. I knew the words, right? Because they repeat. So it made it really easy to, if you have a favorite song, do the same thing, whatever. You guys are kind of feeling where I'm going with this. The point is to practice. Here's some key takeaways from this screen that maybe you're missing. All right. So I'm going to point them out to you. Please notice that when I'm using double quotes to encapsulate a line, that inside those double quotes, I can use single quotes inside of it. Works just fine. I could, if I wanted, encapsulate my output with single quotes instead. That's kind of interesting. You don't have to use double quotes. You can use single or double. But if you want to put a single quote inside of a line with double quotes, that works. But if I want to do it the other way around, so in other words, I can't put like a single quote inside of here and have it work, because what will happen is it'll think it's broken. And the same is true here. If I put a double quote in the middle, and you can see how the text changes. Right. So for example, if I wanted to have a quote that said something like this, thus quote the Raven, I'd have to put the double quotes inside the single quotes to get nevermore with double quotes to show up. See how you have to alternate them. That comes with a little bit of practice. And here's what I'm going to tell you guys, you will mess it up, you know, and do it wrong. And then you'll figure out how to do it right. Right. And that's okay. That's what you want. Sometimes you want to make the mistake just to trigger the correct action. All right. I think I have time to get the next one. So here's the solution to the next one. Let's look at the description. This is 14. The description for 14 is write a program that prints a 2-column list of your friends' birthdays. In the first column, print the names of your best friends. In the second column, print their birthdays. Now, we really don't have column features here, but we will learn how to do that later. The point is to get the stuff to line up. It's just a matter of kind of like doing a little house thing. So here's my solution to that one. Right, so notice how I do a little dash line in there to make it look like a table. And then the birth dates are lining up. And I also set it up so that 2-digit ones and 1-digit ones will line up okay. All right. The last exercise, this one I'm not going to demonstrate, by the way. So this one requires tiny little bit of research. It says, exercise 15 says, in the United States, there's no federal sales tax yet. So I always say that every time I teach this, yet there's no federal sales tax. When that comes, then we're really in trouble. So every state may impose its own sales taxes. And I think this is really interesting because a lot of people don't know what the tax rates are on sales, right? Look on the internet for the sales tax charged in 5 different US states, and they give you 2 of them right here. This is really interesting, right? So Alaska's got no sales tax, and they give you money from the oil wells on top of it. Hawaii's got a 4% tax, at least when they wrote this book. And then the other takeaway here is whenever you see this in a coding book and they go ... that means and the rest of it. That doesn't mean you type ... That just means there's more and you should fill it in. Now, in this case, what's the sales tax rate for Wisconsin?
5.25.
Say that again, Phil.
5.25.
5.25. Is that the state tax?
No, that's the retail tax, or
Yeah, you know, it's kind of an interesting question because then I think it's 5%, and then counties add their own. I don't know. You can ask. The answer is it varies by county. Like if you're in Milwaukee County, I think they bumped it up just recently because they added a county tax on top of it. And then, by the way, whenever you go to a restaurant or a hotel or a place of entertainment, the tax rates are also higher, like 8, 9, 10%. If you guys go shopping down in Illinois, well, like in Cook County, I think it's almost 10%, 9.5%, 10%. And then you wonder, you know, what's kind of interesting, and a lot of people don't know this, like if you're shopping for food in the state of Illinois, you pay tax on your food. When you cross the border and go to Wisconsin, heck, go to Woodman's, you don't pay tax on food items. You do on soda and candy and alcohol, but not on like potatoes and flour and cereal and stuff.
yeah, in Chicago they're charging for plastic bags.
Oh yeah, yeah. Here, I was very pleasantly surprised. I was on a trip to Arizona last year. Actually, it was this year, and I went shopping, and I bought something, and I'm like, "There's no tax on that?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "This is awesome." You know, so like wanted to go buy a big ticket item just to save the 5-10% that they would pay up here. It's really kind of cool, you know. So, all right, folks, that kind of wraps it up. So that one's one you have to do on your own. I think you have enough information now to kind of figure that one out. And this recording ends